Welcome. This is my series, An Asana a Day Keeps the Vrttis Away. But really, an asana a day builds a practice, and that is what this series is about, one pose at a time, playing and exploring. So today we're going to work with Vīrabhadrāsana 3. So it'll be helpful to have a chair, and if you've got 2 blocks, that's great. The chair will suffice. Some of you may want a block. The first thing we're going to do, however, I'm going to use a block, or you could use a hardback book. So first, just come to the center of your space and stand in the mountain pose, Tadasana. We stand with our feet hip-width apart, aligned with the center of our hip sockets, knees, ankles right underneath the hip socket, and aligning your body so that the weight of the upper body is funneling through your bones, through the hips, through the legs, and into your heels. Most of the weight is in your heels. The ball of the foot is grounded. The toes are light and free. Now, imagine pressing from your hips, through your legs, into your heels, and into the earth, and stand tall like a mountain. Tadasana. You'll feel a certain amount of hugging in toward your central axis, through your legs, through your torso. The shoulders are just relaxed as they drop down, the neck and head rising up out of the shoulders. So that's our baseline. Now we're going to take that book or a block and place one foot so that your heel is on the, if your toes hang over, it's not a big deal, but you definitely want your heel on the block. And just as I described before, we're going to press from our hip through the heel down into the earth, which, because you're on a block or a book, makes you rise up. The other foot can stay down. You can be near a countertop or a wall if you need the extra support for staying balanced. And just practice being really strong in this hip and leg. Pressing from your hip through the leg into the heel and down into the earth and grow tall. And then we'll come down and step off. You may even like to just stand in Tadasana and feel the difference between your 2 sides. This builds awareness of what the practice you just did created in your body, the residue, I like to say, that is left from the pose. So let's do the other side. Placing your heel on the block, from your hip, press down through the leg into the heel and rise up. Stay dynamic in this leg. The reason we're using this imagery of pressing from the hip into the heel is so that we don't hang in the hip socket. I'm really keeping that socket very congruent, very connected as I press from the hip down into the heel and keep this leg really strong as I play with my balance. Good. And it doesn't take a large height. A book is fine. We'll step down, check in with your Tadasana again. Notice how your hips and your legs feel, how your connection to the earth feels. Good. Now, you can certainly do that. Once you've had that experience, and that's a great thing to practice with, but you can certainly do that on the floor. You can just imagine that you're standing on that block, pressing from your hip into your heel, down into the earth. You should be able to lift this other leg without a lot of instability. And then you can switch to the other leg. So imagine that you have that block. Press from your hip into the heel, down into the earth, and the other foot comes up effortlessly, right? With lots of support, and you can switch back and forth from one foot to the other, keeping your mind focused on this imagery and the sensations that that creates of stability, and you will build a lot of strength in your hips. So how this plays into Vīrabhadrāsana 3, we're going to use a chair. And as I said, some of you might like blocks. I'll show you in a moment how you can transition from the chair to blocks. But it's kind of nice to start with the chair because of its height from the ground. And We're going to play with this again, and I'm going to use one leg. You can do either side first. Pressing from my hip down into the heel, down into the earth, so that I can bring my other leg up. And you could just kind of touch the chair and then bring it up and come back down. Shift sides, press through the other heel, standing strong and powerful and tall as you lift your other leg up with control. So we're just practicing transitioning from one leg to another, lifting, lowering. And if this is really hard for you and you're wobbling all over the place, just keep practicing this. Just play with it throughout your day, here and there. Okay, now we're going to turn this into Vīrabhadrāsana 3. So my standing leg, pressing from the hip down into the earth. I'm lifting this knee up. I'm not going to put it on the chair. I'm going to reach back as my hands go to the chair. And since we have the support of the chair under our hands, let's take a moment to explore some of the alignment details of Vīrabhadrāsana 3. This leg is still doing that work of pressing into the earth, from the hip, through the heel, into the earth. Notice my toes are free. This leg in the air, similar thing, as if there was a floor underneath it, pressing through the heel, ball of the foot reaching, toes spreading. Really lift through the very top of your thigh to bring that leg up. The belly is snuggling the internal organs up to support the front of the spine. Give the front of your spine lots of support. And then through the crown of the head, you're reaching away from this foot in the air. And then when we're ready to come out of it, we're going to lower the leg and with control, bring the knee back up and then place the leg down. We're back in Tadasana. So let's try the other side. Take a moment actually to just notice how that feels, having done only one side. Good. So pressing through the other leg, from the hip, through the heel, into the earth, lift your leg, and then let's glide through, reaching it back. Find your chair with your hands. And I do this a lot, so my balance is coming along. You may find that you're hanging onto the chair with a death grip, and it's really supporting you. And that is how it is in the beginning. Over time, you're working toward this light touch that you don't need it, because Vīrabhadrāsana 3, eventually the arms go overhead. But for now, we're here. Press through your standing leg into your heel, into the earth. Toes are light and free. The leg in the air is reaching back through the heel. Ball of the foot reaching, toes, every toe is alive. Reach through the top of the thigh. Lift from the top of the thigh up and snug up your internal organs. Let your abdomen hug the front of the spine, giving it support in this position, hanging out over gravity, over the earth. And let the crown of your head reach in the other direction, away from the heel that's in the air. And then we'll come up, and if you have to put your foot down, bring your knee up, that's fine. Another way you could do this, if you found that the balance is difficult, is come forward, hang on to your chair, lift your knee up, and reach back. Play with that for a while as an alternative. And then also work on this separately. So those are some things you can play with to explore Vīrabhadrāsana 3 and all of the wonderful things it does for your body. But let's put some things together here. Choose one side. We're going to work on this side for a moment. I'm going back to my first side. So I'm pressing down through my heel, from the hip into the heel, lifting my knee up, and I'm going to come through to Vīrabhadrāsana 3. Really reach along that horizontal plane, and then come back up and down. I'm going to do that 4 more times. If you'd like to transition to using blocks, you could take your hands to blocks and come back up. See if you can lift that knee as high as you can. It's really going to build a lot of core stability, strength. And we're going out into Vīrabhadrāsana 3. Reach the crown of the head away from the heel of the foot and coming back. And Vīrabhadrāsana 3. Ooh. And coming back. And Vīrabhadrāsana 3. And then coming back up and back to Tadasana. Stand in Tadasana for a moment and just see how that feels. Notice the asymmetry, the residue of that pose. Good. Now we're going to repeat one more time, or we're going to repeat 5 times on the other side. So the most important thing, the foundation, is the power of that standing leg. Pressing from the heel down into the hip. Pressing from the hip down into the heel, rather. And reaching into Vīrabhadrāsana 3. And then coming back up. You could take a little pit stop like I just did. And swinging through. And you may notice doing this on one side is easier than the other. And you've seen I just took 2 pit stops. And this is my hip that is not as strong and stable as the other side. So it's actually good to start on this side. This would be the side that I might do first, but in this case I did it second. And I think I've done 5. I'll do just one more because I wasn't counting. And then back up. Really lift the knee, lift it, and we'll go back to Tadasana. And just take a moment in Tadasana. Feel your connection to the earth. How do your feet meet the earth? What does the pull of gravity feel like through your body now? Notice how this feels in your legs, in your hips, your torso, your shoulders, neck, head. Do you feel the vigorousness of that work? Like my heart is beating a little bit. How does your mind feel? Do you feel focused and centered? Do you feel a lot of busyness? Notice if there are any messages that you're telling yourself. And just notice them without judgment, like what goes through your mind. Okay, now I'm going to just take that, we'll play with one more little thing and then we'll be done. So starting on the side that I chose first, I'm pressing from my hip down into the heel and into the earth. I'm lifting this knee and I'm going to touch down and take a twist. So I'm turning toward the leg that's up, turning away from you. Probably you are turning away from me. This hand can just go on the hip, or maybe you could stretch it out. This arm is just crossing over the knee to give a little connection. I'm not letting the knee the leg that's on the chair swing out to the side. It's staying central. But I am letting my hips move a bit to go into the twist. Then we'll take a deep in-breath and come back to the center. Bring the knee up. Lift it, and back to Tadasana. We'll do the other side. Transitioning your weight, finding the power in that standing leg. Place your foot on the chair. Exhaling, we'll turn. So this hand's just lightly making a connection. We're making sure we're not letting this leg swing out to the side. I'm letting my hips turn as I twist. You could extend the arm out if you like, or a hand can be on your hip. Keep the chin low. Be careful not to try to overdo it with the head by looking up or out, using the eyes too much to turn. Really, if I find my center of my sternum with my chin, I really find the twist starting in my hips and spiraling upward. I really just keep the head very quiet and still. Okay, breathing in, we'll come back. press through your standing leg and lift the leg up. Transition, switch to the first side. Touch down with your foot onto the chair, twist. Breathe in, back to the front, lift the knee up, Vīrabhadrāsana 3. Coming up to the chair again, one more twist. Breathing in and lift your leg and back to the floor. Other side, transition your weight. Place your foot on the chair. Find a twist. Inhaling back to the front, lift the foot off the chair and swing it back to Vīrabhadrāsana 3. Coming forward, find the chair, move into your twist. Inhaling back to the front, lift the foot and come back to Tadasana. Switching sides again. Bring that knee up, place the foot on the chair, and this time, let's see if you can extend the legs straight. All right, so maybe this is not much of a challenge. This is intended to give a little stretch in the back of the thigh, the hamstrings. So you could put a block. Right? Notice how I'm keeping this foot like a standing foot. I'm not pointing through my toe. I'm really reaching through the heel. You can keep changing that positioning to meet your level of stretch. So this is a nice height, but the other thing that's challenging for me is to get my foot there. So lifting the foot off and down. Bring the knee up, extend the leg. That's quads right there. Place it down. Lifting it up, bending the knee. So let's play a little bit, transitioning to the other side. Lift your foot up, come through, Vīrabhadrāsana 3. You could take the arms overhead, swinging back up. Lift that leg as high as you can and place it down. Maybe take your arms overhead. And let's switch sides. Press from the heel through to your hip, into the earth. Lift your leg as high as you can and extend it and let it rest. So you could take however much time you like here to stretch. And then press down into the floor. Lift that foot up. Bring the knee in and stretch back to Vīrabhadrāsana 3. Maybe take your arms overhead. See if you can play with flying. And then come back through. Lift, 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 lift. Place your foot down. Maybe you like to extend your arms. And then lift the foot up and come back down. Stand in Tadasana for just a moment. Notice how that feels. So let's just finish this little play, this Vīrabhadrāsana 3 play, with a forward bend. Folding forward at your hips. You can place your hands on the chair. You could elevate that chair a little bit. Explore your range of motion. So maybe you'd like to come all the way down and rest your head if that works for you. Some of you can step back and have your hands on blocks. Taking your time. One of the important things you want to be aware of here is that as you fold forward, you're not shifting your hips back behind your heels, like I'm demonstrating right now. Really taking my weight forward, so I actually feel more weight in the ball of my foot now as opposed to Tadasana when it was more in my heel. So my heels are lighter than the ball of my foot, but I'm reaching down into the earth with my heels as I fold forward. And you can do this whether your hands are on the floor, on a block, on the chair. This is a quieting pose, stretching the whole back line of the body. And then to come up, you're going to shift your weight into your heels. You can even bend your knees back and bend your knees a bit and reach your hips back. push through your heels as you breathe in and come up. And there we have an asana a day, Vīrabhadrāsana 3. Namaste.